When we think about the end of World War II, we usually picture celebrations, right? Relief. But here's the thing, the end of that war wasn't just an ending. It was, in many ways, the chaotic, violent birth of the modern world. So let's explore how that single moment sent out ripples that are still shaping our lives today. The source material for this whole explainer boils the entire aftermath of the war down to this one single powerful sentence. I mean, just think about how dense that is. It's got three distinct parts, and each one carries the weight of millions of lives and the fate of entire nations. So what does that actually mean? Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to unpack it piece by piece. We're going to look at the three monumental ripples that this one event sent out across history, changing pretty much everything that came after it. Okay, so ripple number one. This is the most immediate one, the most, well, tangible. It's right there in the first part of that sentence. The sheer, unbelievable level of devastation. Look, before we can even get into the politics or the technology, we just have to wrap our heads around the human cost. When the source says the war devastated most of Europe and Asia, it's talking about death and displacement on a scale it's almost impossible to really comprehend. We're talking about entire generations just wiped out. And it's so important to get this. This wasn't just about losses on a battlefield. This was a societal catastrophe that hit two different continents. Families, whole communities, entire cultures, they were fundamentally and permanently changed by this wave of destruction. So you have that unbelievable human toll, and then you have the physical ruin. I mean, this war was fought in ancient cities and modern industrial hubs, and it really didn't spare much. The very basics of daily life, homes, hospitals, factories, bridges, were just turned to rubble. And what's truly mind-blowing when you look at the scope of this is how total the destruction was. It wasn't just one thing, it was everything, everywhere. I mean, from the ruins of Warsaw and Dresden all the way to leveled cities like Hiroshima and Manila. Entire national economies were just shattered, and the basic infrastructure you'd need to rebuild them, it was gone. This was literally ground zero, the point from which the modern world had to be built. But the devastation wasn't only physical. The political landscape was also being completely redrawn, violently. So let's move on to our second ripple, the military occupations that started to define a brand new global order. And this chart really shows how the end of one war immediately planted the seeds for the next global conflict, the Cold War. On one side, you've got the American-led occupation of Japan, which was all about turning a former enemy into a democratic ally. And on the other, you have the Soviet occupation of Eastern Europe, which was about creating a buffer zone of communist satellite states. Two very different occupations driven by two opposing ideologies, drawing a brand new line across the globe, what would become known as the Iron Curtain. Okay, so this brings us to the final part of our source sentence, and you could argue it's the most profound change of all. The war didn't just end an era. It kicked off a completely new one. The phrase began the atomic age sounds so technical, almost clinical, but what it really means is existential. For the first time in all of human history, we had created the power to cause our own total destruction. This wasn't just a new weapon, it was a fundamental shift in what it meant to exist on this planet. And the progression here is just terrifyingly fast. It starts as a pure scientific theory in a lab. Then it quickly becomes a weapon of unbelievable power. And then, almost overnight, it becomes the central, defining fact of a new global reality. From that moment on, international politics, warfare, even pop culture, everything would exist under the permanent shadow of that mushroom cloud. So when we look back at that one single sentence we started with, you can see it's not just a summary, it's a map. It's a map of the world we inherited. These three ripples, devastation, division, and atomic power, they all flow directly from 1945 straight into our lives today. And really, this is the ultimate takeaway. The memory of all that devastation, it led to institutions like the United Nations, which were created to try and stop it from ever happening again. Those post-war occupations, they created alliances like NATO and drew the political map we still pretty much recognize. And of course, the reality of nuclear weapons continues to shape global security and our greatest fears. It all comes from that one moment in history. The war's shadow is incredibly long, and we're all still living in it. So that leaves me with a final thought for you. When you look at the world around you, which of these three powerful legacies do you feel the most?